Your Town Matters is funded by the Government of Canada through the Local Journalism Initiative and supported by Cactus Media, Canada's independent community television association.
I'm Vicki Hogarth and welcome to Your Town Matters. My guest today is Mayor-elect of the Town of St. Andrews, Brad Henderson. Welcome to Your Town Matters, Brad.
Thanks for having me.
So can you tell me a little bit about where you were when you found out that you are the new mayor of St. Andrews?
I can. I had a large gathering by today's standards. There was 8 people there. And we were all in my garage. Actually, Councillor Goumichel wanted to stop by, so he was one of the individuals. And yeah, so the 8 of us waited. We thought that they'd be available fairly quick. We in our heads maybe like 8:10, and then we had to wait, and then we had to wait, and it wasn't too late, but eventually we got the results that we were hoping for, both of us.
So you were on the last council with Mayor Naish. Did you hear from him soon after?
I did. So as far as communication with Mayor Naish about the election, it actually really began about 1.5 years ago. If we recall, we were obviously supposed to be a 4-year council term, the normal term. And right before the election was called, I did have a conversation with the mayor to let him know that I was interested in potentially offering. And at that time, he wasn't sure. So I did announce that I was running very early last time, and it was probably what not to do because I had to wait 1.5 years before I could, but and even leading up to it. So I did have a conversation with him when he finally did decide to run. That's when nominations were open. And then even the day after the election, I called him the next morning just to make sure, you are, although it's not you versus them, when it's one-on-one, sometimes it can feel a little bit that way, and both of us felt that it wasn't personal at all. And then Mayor Naish did call me the day after the election, the morning after, and said congratulations. And we talked a little bit about transition and the fact that as deputy mayor, I already had signing authority for the town, and obviously was up to speed on all the current issues, that he could really, instead of worrying about transition, he could concentrate on kind of what he does next and what opportunity he wants to pursue next. So we've been engaged throughout the entire process, and I wish him nothing but the best.
Yeah, and a long relationship there. And I should let people at home know we are doing this interview just 2 days after the election, so it's very fresh. It might be airing on TV for a bit longer, but I'm wondering if you've had a chance to talk to the new council, which is 2 from the past council, 4 new.
Absolutely. So I spent day 1 actually interacting with staff. So I actually had a half-day meeting with our CAO, Chris Spear, and our clerk, Paul Knopper. And we really talked about kind of that transition plan and orientation for new councillors. And I intentionally waited just 24 hours because the election results were very close. And literally 3 votes separated the 6th from 7th person in the voting, which means that some person, like an individual, in this case it was Mr. Kiley, unfortunately was 3 votes shy of being on council. So I wanted to make sure that there was no recounts happening or anything like that. And I did have the opportunity actually last night to talk to Mr. Kiley, and he said that he has full trust in the election process and it wasn't going to be challenging it. So I've been interacting with council all day. I sent them the first, I guess you could say, group email this morning, but individually I talked to them all. But now we all have meetings booked. I have a one-on-one with each of them tomorrow. And then Saturday, we're getting right into orientation. So yeah, a lot of communication. Everybody's looking, everyone's excited. It's a huge opportunity between returning councillors and some new blood.
Now, we talked a little bit about this before you sat down today. What happens in terms of picking a deputy mayor? Has the process changed for how you go about that?
It has. It actually changed at the beginning of last council. So our last council was actually all acclaimed. And because there was no election, there was no one that had top votes. So we had to come up with a new process in order to determine who the deputy mayor was. And at that particular time, we had to change the procedural bylaw, and the council made the decision that they'd like to keep it that way. So traditionally it was the person with the most votes. The way that it works now is council actually themselves votes on who they want the deputy mayor to be. And you know, there's arguments on both sides. The individual that gets the most votes on council is likely going to be the individual that gets the most phone calls, or you know, has the most interaction. So there's definitely a case to why that individual should be it. But then there's also the case of what the deputy mayor's role is. It's to fill in when the mayor is not available for meetings, or you know, town council meeting, or even meeting with the public, regional service commission responsibility. So the individual with the top votes might not necessarily be the right person for that role. So I look forward to talking with council and determining on our own on how we want to do that. We will have a vote. The question is, do they want to do it now or appoint someone like we did last time for 6 months? And then everybody gets comfortable with everybody's skill set and then does the vote 6 months in.
And deputy mayor would obviously be something you have experience knowing the responsibilities for.
For sure.
Can we talk a little bit about, well, first of all, actually, when would we know that? When would you decide? What would the timeline be?
We have to decide this very quickly, because traditionally the mayor and the deputy mayor have the signing authority as members of council. And the other thing is the Regional Service Commission actually asks who the mayor and alternate is. So we're going to have that conversation on Saturday. On my one-on-ones tomorrow, I actually plan to find out which new members of council-elect are actually looking to go into that role. And I think that our first meeting is June 7th. I think that we'll be officially on June 7th appointing the deputy mayor. So it'll be a very quick process. The only question is it for the duration of the 4 years, or is it just a 6-month appointment?
And as I mentioned, you are a familiar face. We all know you from council already. What has the past 5 years taught you about council in general, and what do you expect to bring to that as your new role as mayor?
For sure. So council, first of all, is a team. And, you know, everyone's going to have their own specific initiatives, their own priorities, and their own vision. But what we have to do a good job, and at times I felt like it was one of the flaws of the previous council, is I don't think we ever united our vision and our priorities. And that's kind of why at times, although a very successful 5 years, there was times where it felt like we might have been all over the place and our workload was heavy. Like our little town, we as a councilors, we met just as much as big cities. So I do think that you really need to align those early on in the process, and then that way everybody is aiming at the same goals and missions. So if when you actually interviewed people for the for the coverage to find out more about them as candidates, there was some similarities in a lot of the things that people were saying. Like we talked a lot about housing and other initiatives like that, but if you're going to dedicate 4 years of your life to essentially volunteering, you want to make sure the things that you raised your hand for are addressed. And you know, sometimes you have to bring in an independent facilitator to get those. But once we're all aligned, I can't wait to see what we bring to the table. As far as mayor, what I'd do differently, there's a lot of great things that I was able to see Mayor Naish do. So that I'm very thankful for those. And as well, I have a good relationship with Stan Choptiani, Mike Craig, and Chris Fleming, 3 former mayors of St. Andrews. I have lunch with Chris Fleming next week to talk about his experiences. Stan Choptiani and I have a Zoom call that's going to be coming up. So I'm going to get some leadership advice on how to facilitate from their experience council. But I really think that there's some things I would do differently. For example, the Regional Service Commission, they're making a lot of important regional decisions. And right now, the mayor is the sole voice at the table. But as a councillor, I wasn't consulted on any of that decision-making process. And although I might be the one at the table now, I think it's important to go back to council and the community and get their input on what they see. And I don't mean every little issue, but the major ones that are going to impact the community, I want my council to have a voice through me at that table. So that's one thing that I would certainly do differently. But I'm really hoping to build a team. Although I was appreciative of my time on the last 5 years as council, I think that we could become certainly a better team. And I'm hoping that it all starts Saturday with orientation, and I'm hoping that we really get off on the right foot and really all together. We're not always going to agree, but we got to agree on the big things of what we want to accomplish.
You've been on council at a very interesting time in history and elected as mayor in what is continuing to be a worldwide pandemic. What has that experience been like navigating the pandemic as on council before, and as you go into being mayor now? We obviously have a busy summer tourist season ahead of us in St. Andrews, and there's a lot of responsibility in your role to navigate that safely for the town. And as we tape this, Brad and I just found out about the reopening plan of New Brunswick that is underway to start in early June and work its way more and more towards a hopeful New Brunswick Day. almost return to, I believe, the green level of recovery if things go well. So there's a lot to navigate on top of the role itself. How are you feeling about that, and how do you bring your experience from the last council to this now?
Yeah, well, I think both of us after this are going to probably be hitting refresh to try to figure out what the new guidelines are. But the announcement today, I think, caught us both by surprise. But kind of what it was like navigating through it, I guess, to take it back from the start, is there were so many unknowns early on. Like, and not to say that we have all the knowns now, but we didn't know exactly what was happening. We didn't know how, serious. We know it is serious, but we didn't know what level of extent that it was going to impact us locally. And trying to figure out, literally 5 weeks before we get into a tourist season, how we keep our community safe. It was a challenging time, and certainly if you look at things like the downtown parking, the parking pilot project that we had, where we eliminated parking to extend sidewalks, it was met with a pile of controversy. But we had 5 weeks, and we took action. We didn't just say we're going to let things happen. We made decisions to keep the community safe. We didn't know if it would actually spread in our area, if there would be a way for public health to slow it down. We didn't know anything about health zones back then. So there was a lot of unknowns, and I'm very thankful. St. Andrews was a leader when it came to having COVID operational plans. And it's not just that pilot project. We had employees that certain business areas of our town couldn't operate. I'll give you an example. Debbie Lord, the youth center couldn't have been open. But Debbie Lord, she raised her hand to go downtown and clean benches and rails and clean basically anything to keep this community safe. And that's what I'm so proud of this town. And I think that New Brunswick noticed that. We talk about the impacts of COVID-19. The fact that all of our provincial borders were closed, and then at the time even the Atlantic bubble was all we had. Normally about 50% of visitors are New Brunswickers. We were almost 90% of what we are in a normal year. So New Brunswickers looked at St. Andrews as a safe place to come. So although there's going to be a lot of challenges we have coming out of this, because we are not out of COVID. I know vaccines are getting rolled out more and more, and you see that I think it's 12 and over now, which is great to see that more people, should they want to or have that option. We're not out of it, and we have to make sure that as a municipality we're doing everything we can to keep residents safe, but also to support businesses. Our biggest fear is that we had a terrible summer, and then in the fall all the businesses downtown can't pay the bills over the winter and you see them full. But we have so much to be optimistic about as a community. One thing that I'll say about COVID as well is we've never had a better opportunity to grow. It is amazing to see how many new residents we've got since COVID-19 happened. People are looking at New Brunswick and St. Andrews and saying that this is a great way to live. And it's not just been safe throughout COVID-19, but it's a great lifestyle. And people are really, I guess in some areas, had to go to a slower pace of life. And they realize that's not a bad thing either. And we have a real opportunity to continue to attract people to come to St. Andrews, not just visit, but live. And but as far as moving forward, one of the first things we're going to have to do as a council is review our COVID-19 operational plan. There was decisions made on the wharf. There was decisions made on the downtown. I'll give you an example. I know the market right now has requested that we actually close that section in front of them on the street. Just because on market day the traffic in front is so significant. So this council is going to have to make some decisions on operations. But again, people wanting to live here the way that New Brunswickers have supported our businesses, I think if you look at it all, it's been challenging times, but we are blessed to be in St. Andrews.
And on the flip side of it's great people are moving here, but I know that you are also equally concerned with the housing crisis of Southwest New Brunswick and the ability to have places to live for people that are affordable in the area. I know it's early on, but I also know you were on the last council, so I can stick you a hard question. What is maybe some of the focus that council will have going forward with the housing crisis? So just to back up your point, so the Southwest Regional Service Commission did a housing study, and just talk about the whole region, because if there's no place to live in St. Andrews or St. Stephen or St. George as a region, we all suffer from all those locations. So depending where you are in the region, it's from 0.3% vacancy to 2%, which means that essentially there is no rentals available on the market. So if you're looking to move here and rent, it's extremely tough. And what that also means is demand and supply. Supply is lower and the demand's high, so pricing goes up. So we are, we would go as far as to say that we are in a housing crisis. So there's going to be lots of things that are challenging. There's no question right now, if you want to tackle affordable housing,
it is the highest time to possibly build. So that's a major challenge, but we've got to stop making excuses. And I said it when we were actually doing Meet the Candidates. We need a municipality that is going to find these solutions. No one is going to come to St. Andrews and fix these problems for us. So there is a whole bunch of opportunities that I literally, on my last day, I guess you could say, before we get the election results, Mayor Nation and I were on a call together with the province, and we need to find an opportunity for the New Brunswick Community College right in the town plat. There, if you look at the town plat, it's fairly developed, but there is some vacant land that the province owns. That's been vacant land for years, and to turn that into a solution for affordable housing, and not to mention increase tax dollars for the province themselves on vacant land through a new build, it's a wonderful opportunity. The town itself owns land out behind the subdivision. If we have demand right now, why are we not looking at garden homes and projects like that? And those are just a couple off. If you talk to individual landowners, like I'll give a random example, Henry Hansen, he's ready to talk about developing the land that he has just off the Bar Road, and he'd be happy that I actually said his name. But there is so many different opportunities. The Huntsman, they're looking at starting a knowledge park, but part of that would actually be some housing options as well. So it's time to start talking. We need to look at our bylaws that are too restrictive to make these happen. We need to look at other communities that are giving incentive, and we need a council that's going to be open-minded to help make these projects a reality. So it's not going to be an overnight fix, but by a series of wins, and maybe even looking at developing a housing committee that, you know, you look at people with government funding experience, you look at real estate agents, they understand the market and the need more than anyone. You look at people that actually do the developments. To put them together, we can really tackle this issue. So I'm glad you asked about that, because housing to me it's going to be definitely the biggest challenge, but it also should be the biggest priority.
I know it's also an issue that you tackled as your other job as the marketing director of Kingsbury Garden, to even proactively go get housing for staff there. Did this crisis inspire that?
It definitely showed the need. So what we were doing at Kingsbury is we were going to some of the top culinary schools in the country, and we told people about what we did at Kingsbury, and we told people about St. Andrews, and they were interested, but the first thing they asked was, where do we live? And we never had a good answer to that until downtown. We purchased the 10-unit building at the time, and we went back the following year and said that we have this place that overlooks the Bay of Fundy, and we were able to literally recruit the top culinary students to move to St. Andrews to fill the jobs we need. And what's really amazing about that is after they had been in staff housing for a couple of years, most of them got apartments and housing and stayed in the community. So that model is one that we've got to look at a bigger scale for St. Andrews. People are willing to move here. We just need to give them the right opportunity. And I will say that we don't actively advertise. Once in a while we have a vacancy, but we get over 100 calls a year without a single advertisement anywhere of people looking for a place to stay. So there's no question about it. One solution isn't going to fix this, but developers have an opportunity to come here, make impact, and fill their investment very quickly.
I do want to touch a little bit on your other job as marketing director of Kingsbury. I know that it's obviously one of Canada's most celebrated gardens, and it puts St. Andrews on the map in its own right. But because of that and your marketing experience, you've also been a part of a lot of attention that's come to St. Andrews from the USA Today article that brought so many people here a couple years ago. The Amazing Race Canada coming to St. Andrews. You've been instrumental behind the scenes in doing some of this for St. Andrews. Can you speak a little bit about your experience in terms of the tourism aspect and role you play in bringing attention to the town?
Yeah, so when I ran for council, just as a councillor 5 years ago, I ran to, in my mind, it was to represent young families, because I had moved back here to raise my kids. And at that time, I think every member of council might have been retired or at least close to retired, and I felt like we needed to make a switch and have some younger voices and really have an equal representation between retirees, young workers, and young. We saw candidates from 19 to I think 23, a couple of them ran. It was so good to see that we're starting to make council not just a position where you have to retire. So I wanted to represent young families, but also the business community. I felt economic development was something the municipality at the time when I first moved here had no role in. So when it comes to some opportunities with Kingsbury, I am a big believer that some of these opportunities for tourism, what's good for St. Andrews is good for Kingsbury and vice versa. So when you get into some of these specific initiatives like Amazing Race, literally a producer called me and originally called me about Kingsbury, and I said, we were supposed to be one segment of the show, and I said, no, you don't spend your all time in St. John. No offense to anyone watching in St. John, but come to St. Andrews. We are just one of the many incredible things to see. And we were supposed to be one segment on the show. We were literally almost the whole show. They went to the Algonquin Golf Course and then to the Point. Interesting tidbit, because I know you're involved with Katie's Cove, helping restore that, is originally they talked about having a battle on floating docks and knocking each other off in Katie's Cove. So there was a lot of cool ideas we didn't do. USA Today, Al McEachern, the mayor of St. Stephen, who just got reelected, he was the first person to call me, but I reached straight out to USA Today and it said, how do we win this? And I knew the travel writer that nominated us, so that made it that much easier. So there was some things that I was able to be a liaison, but the community won that. Everybody in St. Andrews became a brand ambassador and said, we got to tell all our friends and family. And there were so many people that were passionate about that. And, you know, things like the the premiers of Canada all coming here. That was just something, when I heard that they were looking at coming at New Brunswick, it's just such a big opportunity. So I used my position as deputy mayor and I got in front of them, and I'm so thankful. Those are the things that I'm passionate about. Like, as much as bylaws are important and things like that, when you're done your time on council and you look back, like, I'm not going to look back and say I updated a zoning bylaw. I'm going to look back and say we did some pretty cool things. We helped some pretty cool assets. So if you look at the arena roof being restored, a new medical center in here, the wharf's getting restored over the next 4 years. Trails are going to get a significant upgrade. We're going to spend $1.5 million on trails. $1.2 million of that is not even from the taxpayer of St. Andrews. It's from higher levels of government. So there's all these exciting projects and all these exciting tourist opportunities to continue to put St. Andrews on the map. That's what I'm inspired about. And I think St. Andrews has done an incredible job of getting 6 other individuals that are going to be on council with me that I think are going to live this as well. And I'm so looking forward to what comes next on council.
I will say, you might not remember this, one time CTV was doing a story with Kingsbury and you told them, you know what you should do a story on today? The reinvigoration of Katie's Cove. And I got a phone call. I was here to get down to the Cove, and they did a national feature on us that night. So on behalf of the Katie's Cove group, thank you for that. That was a few years ago, and it really lifted our cause up to national attention. So I do appreciate that.
Not to get sidetracked on it, but like Katie's Cove is a hidden gem. Like I remember, you look at photos of days past, but even remember as a kid when there was a lifeguard down there. That's something that over the next 4 years, I hope we have greater conversations about. And I know that they're working behind the scenes at, settling some land issues and things like that. But that's another exciting, again, those are the projects at the end of a council term you look back at and you made this community better. And those are the ones I want.
We're at the end of the interview, but final thoughts on where do you see taking this council with you in the next first year into your new term?
To be honest, I can't wait to hear from them. I'm just, like I said, one member of the team. The first thing I want to do is sit down with them and figure out what their priorities are. I want to align those, but the big thing right now for me is we're already a little bit behind. The election results were delayed. We have a June 7th town council meeting. It's going to be orientation, but when we align our priorities, I can't wait to actually put those right out in the public and communicate those. That's the beautiful thing. But I'm really thinking that based on the interviews that you did with them, there's no question that housing is going to be a big issue. And the other thing that I'm passionate about is people can move here, great, but where do they work?
Right.
There's a lot of opportunities. If you look at the Knowledge Park I hinted at, I'd like to talk about NBCC. They've had steady enrollment decline. There's some things we need to address in regards to employment in this town, and I look forward to, with them, hopefully hitting those head to head.
And are you feeling positive about the summer? I know that there's been some silver lining to the pandemic and that it's brought a lot of New Brunswickers to discover St. Andrews for the first time.
I'm very optimistic for this summer. Last year at this time, I wouldn't have probably had the same answer. I was really afraid of what the impact would be, but we proved that we're able to have people come in our community. We're proved that they want to come to our community, and we were able to do it safely. So we hope that we're obviously going to be able to achieve that again. And the other thing is there's a lot of people that as they open up New Brunswick, there's a lot of people outside of New Brunswick that we miss, their friends, their family, their people that support our community. And when we can open up safely, which sounds like they're starting to put a plan out to do, I look forward, and as the vaccines again continue to roll out, I think that things are going to be pretty sunny in St. Andrews because people know that we've got a lot of great things to offer, and it proved it even with the borders closed last year.
The tourism indicator report finally just from the province, Kingsbrae specifically made it and had shown very little decrease in the number of people that still came to check it out last summer. So you're hopeful for...
I am. So we were down 11%, and in any normal year, I would say, oh my God, like that's not something to be proud of. But when you looked at other indicators like Hopewell Rocks that were closer to 80% down, you realize how lucky we were. The way people came to St. Andrews was a lot different. If you're nervous about COVID and you've got to go downtown, I would go Monday to Wednesday, because what we saw is that was almost like a normal day in St. Andrews. But on Thursday to Sunday, we had more than we would expect in a normal tourism year. People all came here. So there's a lot of reasons for those indicators to believe that people are going to continue to come here. We're one of those spots in New Brunswick you can circle. And even though we might be an hour and a half away, you feel like you're at a destination.
All right. Well, thank you for joining me today. I can't wait to have you back. I will see you at Council.
I look forward to it. Thanks so much.
My guest today has been Brad Henderson, Mayor-elect for the town of St. Andrews. You're watching Your Town Matters on CHCO.